October 20th, 1942. Corner of Leszno and Żelazna Streets, Warsaw, Poland. The autumn air hangs thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, rotting garbage, and something worse, death itself. Irena Sendler adjusts the yellow Star of David armband on her coat sleeve, though she has no Jewish blood. The armband is her permission to enter this walled nightmare, this 3-square-mile prison where nearly 500,000 souls are crammed into what was once home to just 160,000. She's 32 years old, a social worker, a nobody, really, in the grand scheme of this war that's already consumed 3 years of Europe's life. But today, like every day for the past 6 months, she's about to commit an act of defiance that could get her shot in the street. The German guards at the checkpoint barely glance at her papers. To them, she's just another welfare worker, authorized to inspect sanitary conditions in the ghetto. They don't know that beneath her nurse's uniform, taped to her body, are blank identity documents. They don't know that the toolbox she carries contains sedatives and tranquilizers. They don't know that the ambulance she arrived in has a secret compartment. Inside the walls, the Warsaw Ghetto is a vision of systematic starvation. Children with swollen bellies and stick-thin limbs sit against buildings, too weak to even beg. Bodies lie in the streets, covered with newspapers, waiting for the death cart. The official ration is 184 calories per day. The German occupation forces have engineered a slow genocide, and everyone inside these walls knows it. Irena walks quickly through the crowded streets, her heart hammering against her ribs. She's heading to an apartment on Slitska Street. In that apartment, a mother named Rachel has made an impossible decision. Her daughter, Sarah, is 4 years old. Sarah has blonde hair and blue eyes. She might pass as Polish. She might survive. The apartment is on the 3rd floor. Irena climbs the stairs, each step echoing in the hollow stairwell. She knocks 3 times, pauses, then twice more. The code. Rachel opens the door. Her face is gaunt, her eyes sunken, but there's a fierce determination in them. Sarah clings to her mother's leg, a small teddy bear clutched in her hands. "You have everything?" Irena asks softly in Polish. Rachel nods. She kneels down, eye level with her daughter. What happens next is something Irena has witnessed dozens of times, but it never gets easier. A mother explaining to her child that they're going to play a game, that the nice lady is going to take her somewhere safe, that she must be very, very quiet, that Mama will come for her when the war is over. Sarah doesn't understand. How could she? She's 4 years old. Her entire life has been lived inside these walls. She doesn't remember sunshine or parks or anything beyond hunger and fear. Irena pulls out a small vial. This will help her sleep during the transport. It's safer if she doesn't make noise. Rachel hesitates for only a moment, then nods. She administers the sedative, singing a lullaby as Sarah's eyes grow heavy. Within minutes, the child is asleep. Now comes the dangerous part. Irena has several methods for smuggling children out. Sometimes they go in suitcases, sometimes in body bags pretending to be victims of typhus, sometimes in coffins. Today, Sarah will leave in the toolbox. They work quickly. Irena removes the tools, creating space. Sarah is small. Malnutrition has seen to that. She fits, barely. The teddy bear stays behind. It's too risky. Rachel kisses her daughter's forehead one last time, tears streaming silently down her face. "I've recorded her information," Irena says, pulling out a small notebook. "Her real name, your name, this address. When the war is over, you'll find her. I promise." It's a promise Irena has made before. It's a promise she keeps obsessively documented, writing everything down in code on cigarette papers that she buries in glass jars in her garden. Names, addresses, false identities. A paper trail that could get her executed, but also the only hope these families have of reunion. The return journey is always the worst. Irena carries the toolbox carefully, forcing herself to walk at a normal pace. Her papers say she's transporting medical supplies. The German soldiers at the checkpoint look bored. One of them makes a crude joke. Another laughs. They wave her through without opening the box. Outside the walls, the ambulance is waiting. The driver, Irena's colleague, Irena Schultz, helps her load the toolbox. They drive 3 blocks, then pull over. They open the box. Sarah is still breathing, still sleeping, still alive. This is one child, one of 2,500 that Irena Sendler will smuggle out of the Warsaw Ghetto between 1942 and 1943. But to understand how a social worker became one of the most effective underground operatives in occupied Poland, we need to go back to before the war, before the walls, to understand who Irena Sendler really was.
But Irena Sendler did not build this operation alone. Before the walls of the ghetto existed, before the systematic starvation and deportations began, she was already working. She was already collecting names. She was already preparing. Irena Sendler was born in 1910 in Otwock, a small town near Warsaw. Her father, Stanislaw Kushanowski, was a physician. During a typhus epidemic in 1918, he treated both Jewish and Christian patients with the same dedication. When he died of the disease, contracted while treating the poor regardless of their religion, he left his daughter something far more valuable than money, a moral compass that pointed toward the suffering and refused to look away. By 1939, when German forces crossed the Polish border and the occupation began, Irena was a social worker in Warsaw, already embedded in the city's welfare networks. When the regime established the ghetto in October 1940, Irena was on the inside, authorized to move between the Jewish district and the Aryan side. She had access, she had legitimacy, she had papers. What she needed was a plan. In late 1941, Irena connected with Żegota, the underground organization officially called the Council for Aid to Jews. But Żegota operated through the Home Army, the Polish resistance. Żegota could provide money, safe houses, and false documents. What it couldn't do was get children out of the ghetto. That's where Irena came in. She assembled a network of about 24 dedicated operatives. There was Yanka Grabowska, a nurse. There was Stanislaw Petruszkowski, a streetcar conductor who smuggled children hidden in compartments beneath the seats. There was Dr. Julian Alexandrovich and Dr. Rosalia Robacz-Faguska, physicians who certified false documents and treated rescued children. There was Irena Schultz, her colleague, the driver of the ambulance. But the most crucial member of the network was Jaga Pietrowska, a woman in her 60s who posed as the grandmother of countless children who didn't carry a drop of her blood. At checkpoints, she would hold a child's hand, speak Polish with a thick peasant accent, and convince German soldiers that she was taking her grandchild to the countryside for fresh air. The methods evolved as the regime tightened security. In the early months, children could sometimes be smuggled through the courthouse or the waterworks, facilities the ghetto shared with the Aryan side. As guards became more vigilant, other routes opened. Sewers, building cellars that connected to the streets outside. A cemetery with walls on both the ghetto and Aryan sides. One of Irena's most audacious routes involved the Convent of the Holy Family. The building straddled the ghetto boundary. Children would be passed from the Jewish side to nuns on the Christian side. The nuns, taking enormous personal risk, would shelter the children and place them with Catholic families or orphanages. But getting children out was only half the battle. They had to survive once they were outside. And Poland in 1942 was hunting ground for any child who looked Jewish, sounded Jewish, or couldn't produce the right papers. This is where Irena's obsessive documentation became essential. She kept meticulous records, names, original identities, false identities, the addresses where each child was placed. She wrote everything in code and hid it in glass jars buried in her garden. She encoded information in cigarette papers. She created a living map of every child she saved, stored in a manner that would survive even if she didn't. By mid-1942, Irena's operation had developed a systematic process. A family in the ghetto would approach Irena or one of her network members. They would provide photographs, information about their child, names of relatives outside the walls who might help. Irena would assess whether the child could pass as Polish, age, appearance, language ability, all factored into the calculation. False documents would be prepared. These were high-quality forgeries produced by the underground and supplied by Żegota. The documents had to be perfect because a child caught with papers that didn't bear scrutiny would face interrogation, and interrogation meant death. Then came transport day. Depending on the route, the child would be sedated or coached on how to behave. If they were to travel on the streetcar, they memorized a fake name, a fake address, a fake story about visiting their grandmother. If they were to travel in a vehicle, they might be hidden in a compartment beneath the seats, a suitcase, or simply covered with blankets, while Irena spoke to checkpoint cards with the confidence of someone who belonged there. Once outside, the children were taken to safe houses, apartments or convents where they would be fed, cleaned, and given clothes that made them look Polish. Then they were placed with families, usually Catholic families recruited by Żegota, and instructed to treat these children as their own. The families were compensated with money from the underground, money that came from Jewish charitable organizations determined to save who could be saved. By the end of 1942, Irena had saved roughly 1,200 children. She was 32 years old. She had never fired a weapon. She had never fought in a battle. But in the calculus of resistance during the occupation, she had already become one of the most effective operatives in Poland. And the Germans were beginning to notice.
October 20th, 1943. 1 year to the day after Sarah was smuggled out of the ghetto in a toolbox, Irena Sendler is arrested. She's in her apartment when the security police of the regime, the Gestapo, arrives. No warning, no negotiation. They know everything. They know about the network. They know about the children. They know about the buried jars in her garden. They take her to Gestapo headquarters on Suka Avenue. The interrogations begin immediately. What follows is 12 days of torture designed to break her. The interrogators use methods refined through years of occupation: beatings, solitary confinement, psychological warfare. They tell her that her colleagues have already confessed that her network is dismantled, that cooperation is her only hope. They break her feet. They leave her in cells flooded with water. They threaten to execute her if she doesn't reveal the locations of the hidden children. Irena refuses to break. She gives them nothing. When they demand the names of her operatives, she invents false identities. When they demand the locations of safe houses, she provides addresses of buildings already destroyed. She protects her network through a combination of strategic deception and absolute silence about the children. But the security police have patience. On October 31st, 1943, they stage her execution. They take her to a cemetery, force her to dig a grave, and prepare to shoot her. She stands at the edge of the pit, accepting death, when Żegota operatives who had infiltrated the security apparatus intervene. Money is paid. A German officer is bribed. Irena is spared. But not freed. She spends the rest of the war under restricted movement, watched by the regime, unable to continue her rescue work. The operation continues without her, other members of the network carrying on the mission. But for Irena, the war becomes a waiting game, a desperate hope that somehow, against all odds, the children she saved might actually survive. When Soviet forces liberate Warsaw in January 1945, Irena emerges from hiding. The Warsaw Ghetto has been completely destroyed. The systematic murder of 3 million Jews across the regime's occupied territories is now undeniable. Nearly 400,000 Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto alone have been deported to extermination camps. The horror is so complete, so absolute, that it seems impossible anyone could have escaped. But 2,500 children did, because of Irena Sendler. In the immediate post-war years, Irena works tirelessly to reunite the surviving children with their families. It's a heartbreaking task. Many parents are dead. Many relatives are dead. Of the 2,500 children Irena saved, she was able to reconnect only about 2,000 with relatives who survived. The others had no one left. For them, she arranged adoptions, placement in orphanages, new lives built on top of the ashes of their destroyed families. She retrieves those buried glass jars from her garden. The records are intact. In those jars is the only documentation that proves these children ever existed, that their original families ever lived. She guards that information with the same intensity she showed during the war. Irena remains largely unknown for decades. Poland, occupied by the Soviet Union after the war, did not celebrate resistance during the German occupation. The official narrative ignored the efforts of people like her. The Cold War meant that Eastern European stories of resistance were suppressed in the West. Irena worked as a nurse, lived modestly, and raised a family. She didn't speak about what she'd done. It was only in the 1990s, after communism collapsed, that her story began to be told. In 1965, the Israeli Holocaust memorial Yad Vashem designated Irena Sendler as righteous among the nations, one of the few non-Jews who risked everything to save Jewish lives. In 1999, a group of high school students in Kansas produced a play called Life in a Jar, researching Irena's story and bringing it to international attention. She received numerous honors and was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Irena Sendler died on May 12, 2008, at the age of 98. She never sought recognition. She never profited from her story. When asked why she did what she did, she gave the same answer for 60 years. It was simply the right thing to do. In a world that often seems defined by humanity's capacity for evil, Irena Sendler stands as a reminder of its capacity for courage. She saved 2,500 children. She changed thousands of lives. She proved that one person, armed with nothing but conscience and determination, could stand against genocide itself. Her legacy isn't just the children she saved. It's the living proof that in darkness, individual action still matters.